behavior will never change. Okay? I'm sorry, I know it's Dr. Phil thing, but that's true. But the point I would have to make also with students who are Fs is why? Why are these kids failing? Now, we've talked about all the testing and things. Being the math coach at Bayside, that was the year that they had got the F for the school grade. So once a month we used to have to go to Orlando to meet with the state officials and go over this and go over that. I'll tell you honestly that because, again, being a math nut, I did all the spreadsheets, I did all the numbers, I did the whole thing at Bayside. Then when I got to Dunedin as a math coach, I did the same thing there. 90% of all the data that I gathered was never used. Total waste of time, okay? I'm talking at these schools now. There were two things I can honestly say that I'm glad the superintendent did. One, made it into 4 9-week marking periods instead of 6 6-week marking periods. That may not seem like a lot, but at least my perspective, that's a big difference. Also making the first semester end at Christmas break. Other than that, I can't think of too many things positive. But you have to think of this. If you go back to the 6 weeks, we had progress reports. Well, they came out like the 3rd week. But by the time they got processed, okay, it was like 1 week to go in the marking period. How's a student going to change that fast? It's not going to happen. Okay, so the 9-week period gives that student that much more time. But let's look at the situation. There are kids who come to school. I can only speak to P-Tech South, Bayside, and Dunedin High School. These kids come from homes that you cannot imagine. You cannot imagine. And we want these kids to perform at a high level when they come to class. And where they come from, the parent conferences, say, wow, okay, these kids need help. And a lot of the things that these kids are going through, it's not their fault. I did some trainings up at the East Lake High School this past spring. High school seniors, some of them, you start talking to them, they're working 3, 4, 5 nights a week because they have to, okay, because of the family situations. So there are all kinds of things that go along. But see, my point with the F is why? How did that happen? Now, if a kid comes in and does nothing, okay, parent conferences, the whole thing, you're not going to get 100% of everything. But there's a lot of reasons why these kids either act or perform the way they do. I don't know.
I think I'll just say. When we, as a teacher, yes, there is a list, and the list is narrowed down to about 3, and they go into, the books go into the teachers, and the teachers review. They supposedly have an input to what I know you taught. I've never seen any time a whole school picks that book, we never see the book that we choose that would be good for our students. This year we did not have that choice because we had 2 weeks, the books were bought, and all the curriculum that we get now is rewritten to meet the new standards, so everything we've had has been changed. So they're written for the standards, so you think just that way. I personally feel that we need to be able to, yes, that's the state mandated what we need in the classroom, but we should also have the opportunity to allow the autonomy of the teacher to teach other textbooks in the classroom, whatever is needed to be able to get these kids to learn. As far as the Fs, they happen. I had a student this year, this last June, had straight Fs in my classroom, and I was told you can't give a fit, because they're going from 5th to 6th, go to middle school with straight Fs. I maintained the straight Fs because that's what they earned. And the administration changes those grades so they go on to middle school. So, yeah, we're told 5th graders cannot have Fs, even though they've earned them. So that has to change. Thank you.
That's amazing.
So I've been teaching 20 years, and I can say with some authority and experience that textbooks are the worst way to educate. They are, students don't read them, they're boring, they're poorly written, they don't have often all the right information, etc. So in some ways, and I moved away from textbooks in a lot of my classes on the college level because the goal was to teach how to read, how to be inquisitive, how to be curious, so that the child could go and learn on their own, right? So textbooks don't serve that. Textbooks teach you that history is boring. Textbooks teach you that algebra is boring. They teach the wrong lessons. Algebra is not boring, but the textbooks do teach you that it is boring. So I'm with Beverly. I think that the more that we can provide latitude for teachers to teach, to bring readings, to notice the child's curiosity, to stimulate that curiosity, because ultimately, what do you all remember from 3rd grade? Right? But you've all learned how to be learners and readers, and that's really the goal of education. It's not to fill the child's head with a doctrine, with a set of ideas. It is to teach them how to be engaged learners, right? I said this afternoon, I'll say it again, teaching is not a science, it's an art. And a child is not a vessel that you're filling up with information. It's a finely tuned instrument, or an instrument that can become finely tuned, but the child has to become a self-learner for that to happen. So teachers should have more latitude to work in that way. And the second part of it, and I'll just speak from my own experience, I got in trouble at Eckerd College because I failed a lot of kids because they didn't deserve to pass. And we were a private college, and I was told by authorities there that they're paying good money for this education, and so they ought to pass the class. And this is higher education. I'm appalled by that reasoning. I think it makes no sense whatsoever. If you fail, you fail, and you should live with those consequences.
Come back next year.
All right, so the textbooks, yes. The Florida legislature wanted to pass a law, as Mr. Peluso pointed out, to allow school districts to select their own textbooks. The Florida Association of Superintendents basically came out and said, oh, hell no, we don't want to do that. Don't give us that responsibility. And the school boards pretty much unanimously backed up that decision. The school board doesn't want to be bothered with this. They don't want to have to come up with a committee of normal citizens, quote-unquote normal citizens, to select a textbook for whatever reason. They don't want to do it. It's a burden, right? It's easier to let the state decide, here's your list of 5 textbooks, pick one and be done with it. So we had the opportunity. It was given to us. Our school boards decided not to do it. I would have rather sat down with 15 people in a room, boxing gloves and whatnot, and tried to figure out how we're going to decide what textbooks our kids need to read. Although I do agree with Mr. Curtis, textbooks suck. They really do. They are boring. They are demeaning in some cases, and they really don't teach what needs to be taught. Now, to your question, Fs, yes. F is an F is an F. We grade our schools with an F. We need to grade our students with an F. The F needs to stick.
And our teachers.
Chris,
That's it.
Yes, sir.
can a local school board choose a textbook outside of the quote approved list?
No, they cannot.
Yes, they can.
Tony,
They can?
hello.
That bill, Senate Bill
Last question.
64, gave the constitutional authority to the school board to select whatever it wants.
Okay, then
They
I
can-
stand
they can
corrected.
override, so no.
I read it differently, but I understood it as this is the assigned list from the Department of Education, and you're going to have to choose from this list,
But you can, you do have the authority to go.
okay.
All right, thank you very much.
I was learning a lot about what you had to say about the students learning, the discipline problems and all that. I just kind of want to make a comment. Some of the kids do come from bad backgrounds. They come into school, and especially with this Common Core thing where they're going to be treated more like computers than human beings. You asked one question. Do you remember what you learned in the 3rd grade? I'm old. All right? I'm old. I remember what I learned in the 3rd grade. We used to have a teacher that used to go down to, oh, geez, she used to bring in parts of unborn animals in 3rd grade. Boy, that class, she had no discipline problems. She was free to teach. They never stayed, with the teachers had more freedom. There were no discipline problems. I went to school in a very bad neighborhood. We had every race, every nationality. We had foreigners. If somebody, got sent to the principal's office, they never got sent back again. And we were safe. So I think the problem is when you get these poor kids that come into school, if you can teach them how to learn, not teach them to the test. If they can learn, they're going to want to learn more. They're going to go beyond the textbooks. They're going to watch documentaries like Turn on TV. You must watch that. The one about the American Revolution. Educational things. Want to seek out these things. Bring that these people in history were actual human beings. They weren't just names in a textbook.
Right.
And I think you're going to not get so many Fs. That's all I have to say.
Can I just make a quick?
Sure, you can make it quick.
It's not socioeconomics that dictates behavior. My son is in a fundamental school, and there are plenty of kids from really wealthy backgrounds who misbehave just as well. It's not a one-to-one relationship. Some, like this isn't even on. Some of what I've seen in the fundamental schools absolutely appalls me in terms of what these kids are being taught about how they ought to behave. So it's not wealth that dictates that. And every child should be held accountable as far as that goes. And I have seen, quite honestly, more of the kids. So my kids started out in a low-achieving school, in a majority African-American school. I saw those kids held more accountable for their behavior than some of the kids from wealthy families in the fundamental schools.
They need to be disciplined.
And I think every child needs to be held accountable. So I wouldn't sort of connect those things together. Second thing, I'm old too. I'm going to turn 48 tomorrow.
Oh, jeez.
I remember learning the times table in the 3rd grade. That was when I learned it, and they don't do that anymore. You don't memorize
So-
it.
so
Yeah, well,
rote-
my kids did though, because they made it.
Rote memorization with Common Core has been taken out. Okay, we don't do rote memorization anymore for whatever reason. 2 times 2 is 5. If you think it's 5, then it's 5. To follow on to Mr. Curtis's point, socioeconomics and low performance in school has been made into a causational thing, meaning if you're poor, therefore you cannot learn. It's not causational. It's a correlation. Yes, we have a lot of underperforming kids that are in a low socioeconomic situation. But it doesn't mean that because you are poor, therefore you cannot learn. Okay? So we need, when we read the paper, we need to take that away from when we read the paper. Because you are poor does not mean you are stupid, nor can you learn. It's important to understand this, because every time you turn around and you read the paper, it says, these are poor kids, therefore that school is failing. No, the school is failing because the parents aren't showing up. And we can say that now because we have schools in South St. Pete that are failing, that have new administrators, have the most highly effective and paid teachers, they have the best facilities, but the parents aren't showing up. And we need to figure out a way to get those parents back into the classroom, get those parents engaged in the education of their kids. And I think for the majority of us, in the last couple of days out on the campaign trail, we've run into each other. We all want the parent back into the classroom.
The
We all have.
parents may not always show up. They might have a drug problem. What I'm saying is you got to break the cycle.
Then if we can't get the parent in the classroom, we need to get the community engaged, because right now, every single school in Pinellas County is a close-to-home school, meaning it is a microcosm of the community it serves. We aren't busing kids around the county anymore. Those kids are walking to school or being bused within a 2-mile radius. That school is a microcosm of where those kids live and where they need to learn. And we need to get that community engaged. And it's going to take strong leadership in those individual schools, and that's what I'm for. And what I've heard in the last couple of days, out on the campaign trail, everybody up here wants that. We want strong leadership in the school, we want to bring the parent back in, and we want to make sure that the parent or a mentor is the focal point of that child's life, because that child is going to learn at home before they come to school.
All right.
Thank you. That's it. That's it.
I want to thank the